This is PTV World. I am Syed SHABAHAT Ali and you're watching Fault Lines. COP28 is taking place in UAE's capital, Dubai. Back to back, this is second year when a GCC country, a Middle Eastern country, an Arab nation is steering the process of global climate change negotiations. And why it is important? Because the countries that are consuming most of the oil and the fossil fuels have already been very active in the process. But now the steering of this wonderful event is led by the countries that are playing a pertinent role in production of fossil fuel as well as in the trade of global fossil fuel. As you understand, Dubai plays an imperative role in the process. Pakistan's delegation was led by the acting Prime Minister, by the caretaker Prime Minister of the country, Anwarul Haq Kakar, who spoke to the occasion. It's very important and significant to note that this event takes a revival or a stock take of all the commitments that have been made by the member nations. COPs stand for the United Nations Climate Change Conference, and Climate Change Conference are specifically have become important since 2015. When in Paris, more than 200 nations collectively agreed that they will keep the global climate temperature less than 1.5 C. And since then, in every year's November or the end of every year, a COP event takes place. I hope you remember last year it took place at Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. We covered the issue during the show. And this time in UAE, the process is being led or presided by Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, Minister for Industries and Advanced Technologies for UAE, who also happens to be Managing Director and Group CEO of Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. He's presiding the entire process. Now, why it is important? Because the corporates, particularly the corporates that are responsible in the trade, that are taking active part in the oil production, need to take a very responsible role. That was being felt since quite long, and now finally we are all here in COP28, which has commenced on 30th of November and will continue till 12th of December. To speak about this very pertinent issue, we have requested two leading scholars, Dr. Asif Javed, who is an environmental expert and environmental scientist from Pakistan with more than 18 years of research in this subject. He also holds a PhD degree, is my first guest into the show. Dr. Asif Javed, I welcome you to the show. Dr. Asif, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Doctor, first tell us about your thoughts on this COP28 taking place. Why the scientist community is so excited about the COP event every year?
Yeah, Shabahat, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me and to speak on this important occasion. COP is basically a conference of parties. And parties here refer to the world leaders, basically those leaders who basically attend this conference and made pledges and become a part of that conference. So they become the party of that. So it is basically the gathering of more than 195 or 196 leaders of the world who get together to discuss the issue of the climate change, their solutions, and so many things. And basically, it is the result of basically United Nations framework on climate change, which was held in 1992 and come into force in 1994. And this COP28 is very important. Initially, there was some major decision taken in COP21, referred as the Paris Accord, where 1.5 degree or 2 degrees Celsius pathway was set as a target for the coming. So what is 1.5 degree Celsius pathway is basically the difference of temperature. The average world temperature should be capped at maximum of 1.5 degrees compared to the pre-industrial era, or you can say like from 18th century to 19th century. So this 1.5 degree is the target, and 2 degrees Celsius compared to that is also acceptable. But beyond that is really alarming for all of us. So this COP28 is very important. Its main focus will be on global stock take. Global stock take means how far have we come, and what is to be done in the future, and in what direction we are moving in terms of the targets that were set in Paris Accord.
And
Yes,
is
Shabbat.
this why the Paris Climate Change Agreement in 2015 is always remembered and much talked about? What was the significance of the Paris Agreement reached in 2015?
In 2015, it's a major landmark agreement because it was clearly, they have clearly defined the target for the world, such as 2 degrees Celsius temperature, as I mentioned. So that's a target, that's a benchmark on which every progress of the world should be made by every COP conferences, things like that. So in terms of this is the very significance of Paris Accord. And the second most important significance is that in Paris Accord, basically the United States, who is a big emitter of the greenhouse gases, also after when the Biden after when Biden became the president of the United States, he brings the United States into the Paris Accord, not into the Kyoto Protocol, initially referred as you can say like Convention on United Nations Framework, which was signed in 1997.
Doctor,
This is a
when I was doing a bit of research for this show, I saw a terminology which was global stock take, and it's the first year when the global stock take will be evaluated. No, now, tell us what this terminology essentially means. What is the global stock take?
global stock day is very important. It is about basically to measure the progress toward against the set target that in the Paris Accord. Basically, how far we have come until now, in what direction we are heading in terms of targets that was set in the Paris Accord. So this is a very important. In COP28, definitely there should be a discussion on mitigation of climate change. There will be a discussion on adaptation, loss and damage fund, and finances, fossil fuel phasing out, something like that. But most important thing is the global stock take. As I mentioned, it is to measure the progress in what direction we are moving. And clearly, in the last year, I think the Indian Prime Minister and UAE, they had a joint statement regarding this global stock statement. This could be the totally the landmark of this COP28 if the countries or leaders have agreement or measure where they are. But still, Shabahat, there are many challenges. For example, the world is clearly divided into developed, developing, and least developed countries. So climate actions basically may be feasible somehow for European countries, for America, and for developed countries. But there is a big problem in the developing countries who don't have resources or technological uh, advancements, things like that, to implement the climate action in a true sense. That's very important.
Thank you very much, Dr. Asif Javed, for being guest on our show. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Dr. Asif Javed, and a few pertinent things that he mentioned is that the 2015's agreement, which was at that time not attended, the conference was not attended by the United States when Donald Trump was the president. Later, when Biden took the presidency, he took United States into the fold of this agreement, which was a very pertinent development as per him, and also that the measure of progress made by all these countries as an important thing that he told us needs to take place every year. My second guest in the show is also an environmental and climate expert. His name is Abdullah Deol, who's joining me on Skype. Abdullah Deol, I welcome you to the show. Abdullah Deol, I welcome you to the show. Sir,
Thank
I
you very
think
much.
you have muted your mouth, your mic. You need to unmute it.
Yeah, and I think, how can you hear me?
I can hear you now. What's Abdullah Deol? What's your expectations from the conference that's going on in UAE?
Uh, Expectations, not just as a climate expert, but as a human being, as any living organism. It's not just for the first organ. Concern is that we promised in 19. The UN framework for Convention on Climate Change came into existence in 1992, where 197 countries agreed upon talking about the climate change and making a policy about it and how to protect our biodiversity and how to save our planet. And we have seen in COP27 in Paris Agreement 2015, people were not taking it seriously. And if we look at it right now, with the recent floodings, not only in Pakistan, where 30 million people were affected and one third of the country were underwater. We look at the Antarctica, the melting of the glaciers, I think a couple of days ago, the biggest uh, named glacier just cracked and he is now free floating. So my expectations is that we reduce our carbon emission levels, greenhouse emissions, and we do things that are needed to be done. It's not about the developed or underdeveloped countries. It's about the existence of humanity and our planet itself. Otherwise, sea level will rise so much, and with this carbon emission, we won't be even able to breathe at all. What are we going to much of industrialization with this much of progress? I mean, how is this a progress if I have a latest phone, a car, but I cannot breathe and I would probably be needing a personal oxygen cylinder to move around and I will have to build, I don't know, 100-meter tall house just not to get flooded. So my expectation is that leaders do what they have said, they make their promises fulfill, and they make sure that we do this 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees reduction of the temperature that we have promised, that we're not going to increase our climate temperature more than 2 degrees by 2050 and reduce our carbon emission 43%. I think
Mr. Deol, that reminds me that last year in Egypt, Sharm el Sheikh, when COP27 was taking place, there was a loss and damage fund which was created. Countries like Pakistan that are recipient of one of the worst floods of our history. We are seeing again Kenya being entirely washed out. A main part of the country is washed out with these floods. We're expecting a lot from that fund. So where are we on that fund and the commitment made by the donor countries?
I think it's been delayed and we haven't seen anything happening right now. I think we haven't received any donation, but it's a part of a Paris Agreement that we have to help each other with technology and also with the finance. These two things are there apart from other things that are mentioned in that. And also they have made a summit in Geneva this year. So there was conference happened especially for Pakistan, and I think they promised the world pledged $10 billion for Pakistan, even though we need $30 billion. But the damage was so much, and Pakistan, if you look at the geography of Pakistan, we have highest number of glaciers anywhere in the world outside the poles and the most number of glaciers inside any country on this entire planet. So we are on the edge and brink of collapsing and getting wiped out. China, India, all Europe, all these Western countries, all these big industrialization hubs, they are making a lot of money, but their carbon emission is causing a lot of ice melt and glacier melt in the Himalayas, Karakoram, and Pakistan is a joint point of all these three mountainous regions. So they might be making a lot of money, but I would call it a blood money because it caused a lot of flooding, which caused a lot of uh, life loss. So this is not the clean money. They really have to make up for it, and the world needs to be okay. The Middle East is super rich, Europeans are super rich, all these worlds are super rich, but they need to make sure if today we are suffering, eventually they will suffer too, and they must make sure that their progress does not come as a result of life loss, property loss, animal loss, mental and physical damage to the country of Pakistan or any other country. So they probably need to do that. I hope next year after the election we will have a stable government. Our government will be able to talk in more confidence and more in detail, and we can approach them and we can ask them that, hey, we're not looking for aid. That's our aid.
Mr. Deol, while you are mentioning the glaciers and other vulnerabilities. Don't you find agriculture to be one of the most vulnerable areas, because we are primarily an agrarian economy as of now? When we speak, majority of people employed in this country are employed in agricultural sector. This is where we get most of our GDP from. So isn't it one of the major problems, major crisis that agriculture sector in Pakistan is facing because of the climate issues?
Exactly. Like I said, if we are suffering today, might be those developed countries will suffer because climate pattern, the rainfall patterns has changed all over the world. And when patterns have changed, it means their agriculture is going to be affected too. For example, in Pakistan, Rabi crops and the Kharif, the pattern changes are causing a lot of problems for the farmers. And this means that it's not just the livelihood of the farmers. Maybe that person will change his business. He will say, okay, I'm not making any money. I will not grow any more crops. I will do something else. But the thing is, we all humans, almost we are 8 billion people, we all are going to suffer. It's not just Pakistan. There will be so much famine, there will be so much hunger, and there will be so much crime. Because obviously, when people are hungry, even though they have money in their pockets, they're gonna snatch food from each other. So the climate change, especially this flooding and the change in the rainfall pattern, is causing a lot of problems
I
and negative effects on the agriculture. And talking about Pakistan, because our GDP runs through
got your
it,
point.
and
Got your point.
Pakistan.
Thank you very much, Abdullah Deol, for being guest in our show. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Mr. Abdullah Deol, who was joining me on Skype, and one of the key areas of his concern are with regards to the ecosystem that we are all a part of. Very rightly pointed out, if the farmers or the people on the downest strata of society, of the economic system, who are making their means by agriculture sector, if they aren't able to meet both the ends, they are going to certainly start doing something else which can perhaps propound the food crisis that the planet Earth is facing at large. We'll take a break and we'll join you back with second segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, with the second part of this program, we are going to discuss one of the most pertinent events that is taking place on planet Earth, and that is a massacre taking place in Gaza. As you know, after 4 days of what we wanted to call a ceasefire, but the rest of the world was calling it a halt in hostility, the hostilities have returned. Khan Yunis camp has been heavily bombarded, and there are more than 400 targets in the most densely populated city of the world. When we watch the international media, it is quite ironic to see and observe that the 24 captives from the Palestinian side who have been released to Israel are more celebrated than 15,200 innocents killed in their strikes. And yet no one wants to talk about them. Yes, there are countries that are trying to take active interest. Hats off to Qatar for taking again a lead in negotiations, but the Israeli delegation, after the end of the 4 days, have left the capital of Qatar, Doha, and have returned back to Tel Aviv. The Israel-Gaza war that had started on 7th of October have only seen 4 days. And Israel is still in a process which is not making sense, which is not being justified, or the major supporters of Israel are now not able to justify this killing in cold blood. To talk about this very pertinent issue, I have invited two experts of Middle Eastern affairs. My guest in studio is Nazir Moeed, who is an expert of Middle Eastern affairs and frequently appears on our show with regards to the crisis in the Arab world. Nazir, I welcome you to the show. And my second guest, who will shortly join me on Skype, is Ahmed Zaki, another expert of Middle Eastern affairs, who will be joining me from abroad. Starting from you, Nazir, welcome to the show.
Most welcome, Shabahat.
And tell us about the situation as of now when we speak.
Well, it's a very big tragedy happening in Gaza nowadays in front of the eyes of the whole world, which is totally silent and shamefully silent, watching the killing of small babies, children and women and innocent people around the small city of Gaza, which is, as you mentioned, the most populated city in the world.
Most densely populated
yes,
city in the world.
and around 2.2 million people live in a small city, which is length 25 kilometers by width 5 kilometers, not more than 5 kilometers, which is very small city. And the people are just living in this prison for more than 2 decades now, and they are suffering even before the war. And now Israel is bombarding the whole city of Gaza, starting with the north, and now it's bombarding most of the areas of Gaza and killing thousands of people. The death count reached above 15,000 people were killed in Gaza in the last 1.5 months. The daily death count is in hundreds of people are killed, hundreds of children are killed every day in front of the screens, in front of the cameras. We can see that the whole world is watching this massacre and this crime. It's a war crime, but the world is still silent.
Ahmed Zaki, coming to you, I welcome you to the show. Ahmed Zaki, can you hear me?
Thank you for having me. Yes, I can hear.
Zaki, tell us, what are the Israeli objectives? I mean, we cannot see any end to it. We are just seeing a massacre, killing of children, women, elderly, and without seeing an end to it. I don't find an end to the strategy that Israel has adopted. What's your take on it?
And as you know that since the start of this atrocity in October 7th, Israel declared a full-scale war on Gaza. And this is mostly against the Palestinian population, even though they are accusing the militant group of Palestinian people. But on the other hand, you will see that their main objective is that they are bombarding the main populated area, residential buildings, refugee camps, schools. They are bombing the every facility which can be used for the civilian purpose. And on the other hand, when they are talking to the international media, they are hardly controlling. There are very few media, independent media, who are reporting frequently on the social media, then you will see that the objectives of the Israel, which they are saying that we want to eliminate the militant in Palestinian militant in Gaza, it's not actually the reality, and they are not going through that. Every action that Israel is taken towards the genocide and the international criminal crimes.
Coming back to you, Nazir, as you were saying, it's a massacre, it's a killing in cold blood that the world is watching with an absolute player, I would say, because we see very little action on ground. Why do you think they resort for violence instead of solving their issues with negotiations? And what exactly would they want to achieve from all of this massacre? Will this solve the problem? Will it not create more terrorists as a response to it?
Well, the Zionist regime is taking revenge, and it knows that it's always above the law. No law controls the Zionist regime since its beginning in 1948. Till today, this regime is above the international law, above any treaties or human rights agreement, international human rights laws or treaties. They were never controlled by any treaty, by any human rights laws. So they are just making these crimes, this genocide against the Palestinians. It's not the first time. It's happening again and again every 1 or 2 years. And Israel was never held accountable towards its crimes. So it's something happening just as a routine. And these Zionists, they know that they are always above the law, and they are backed by the Americans, by some Western countries. So they are just killing people with cold blood.
Zaki, coming back to you, so how do you see the role of United Nations? An organization ideally created to intervene and to step out in situations like this one. We saw United Nations failing to stop Rwanda genocide. We saw United Nations failing to stop the genocide in Bosnia, and there is yet another genocide, and the United Nations has not been able to act. So how do you see the role of the United Nations at large?
As you know that the United Nations General Secretary Antonio Guterres, he was feeling like he was feeling like helpless while he was talking about the conflict between Israel and Palestinian people. This is it shows that even if he could have a power, a minimum power to use, he could use, but unfortunately, because of the American support on Israeli atrocity against the civilian population of Palestinian, United Nations cannot do anything because it's a member of the veto power. United Nations should have to conduct when they go to the Security Council, they cannot pass on that because as you know that even the ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire, twice, United States vetoed, and it fought against that ceasefire, and that shows that it's the main powers which are benefiting or wanted to go for genocide against the Palestinian people, and it's an open secret that everybody can see today.
Coming back to you, Nazir, in the two sides, we see Palestinians being killed by the state of Israel. Israel has support from the United States. And while Palestinians do not have an active support from Iran, at least we don't have any evidence for it, but yet it is catching the mainstream news. Everyone is saying in the West, Iran, Iran, Iran. Why Iran is such a concern while we don't see Iran playing any active role in this entire process?
Iran for many years recently was supporting some of the freedom fighters in Palestine and some different groups in Palestine, not the Palestinian Authority recognized by the United Nations and other bodies. But supporting some other groups in Palestine, and that's why the Zionist regime had a lot of disagreements and conflict with Iran due to the Iranian support to the enemies of the Zionist regime. Actually, Iran is also supporting different groups in different areas for their interest as well, because Iran is playing a special role in the region. They are an old country with old history and civilization, and they want to remain as a main player in the Middle East. So they have different groups, different parties who are loyal to Iran and who are supported by Iran. And definitely, as everyone knows, that the Palestinian issue is a central issue of the Middle East. So Iran needs to play a role in Palestine to show itself as a main player in the Middle East.
Coming back to you, Ahmed Zaki, you have seen the Arab countries taking a lot of interest in this entire process. We have seen Egypt being very proactive. We have seen Qatar taking a lead once again. Qatar, that was a very important country in even striking a deal between the Taliban and United States a couple of years back, is now trying to take a central role, or rather has taken a central role. While we are doing this show, the president of France is on a visit to Qatar to re-invite Israel. So how satisfied you are with the role, with the diplomatic effort being made by the Arab countries at large?
So far as we know that Qatar was advocating to mediate, and they were able to mediate that the 4-day ceasefire, temporary ceasefire that goes between the militant group in Gaza and Israel. That was kind of successful attempt that with the collaboration of Egyptian secret agencies who have a direct communication with with militant groups or resistance group, Palestinian resistance group. And that is how Arabs are showing their credibility that they can control or they can dictate to the Palestinian resistance group against the Israeli enemy. And on the other side, Israel shows that they are listening the demands of the President Biden, and both sides they were trying to mediate. From the Israeli side, American diplomats were doing a lot of effort. On the other side, Palestinian resistance groups, it was showing a lot of effort with their military, with their political wing in Doha. So that's how it shows like Arabs are trying to mediate and to resolve this conflict, but it's not enough. When it comes to the humanitarian need, when it came to the Arab influence in the region, they are more in linear with the Western demands,
But Zaki, the
especially
problem is that
American.
they are not allowing any humanitarian support. I mean, Saudi Arabia wanted to help, UAE wanted to help, Egypt wanted to help. Only 2 trucks of water were allowed in, while the Secretary General of United Nations was standing at Rafah border and requesting the global community. So don't you think it actually minimizes the chances of any intervention by these countries?
This if we see like the beginning of the offense of Israel, American warships they came close to the Gaza, And American position was very clear that any foreign intervention on this conflict, America is going to go against, even if it's Saudi Arabia, which is one of the closest friend in the Middle East. So America is very clear that they are going to stand tin and tiff with Israel, whether they are right or wrong. So anyone who want to intervene this with using force, he's going to face American army and American military in the Middle East, which has
Zaki,
a
if I
lot
can
of
cut you here, I'm
military
sorry, but
in the Middle East.
this brings me actually to a very essential point, and that is the support of the United States. Now, tell me if this support that Israel is receiving from the United States is from the heart of the American people? Is it how they feel actually, or is it more of a political influence that Israel enjoys on the politics of United States that brings US to become such an avid supporter of Israel in the region?
It is the political support. It's the political influence that they have mostly. Let me tell you one thing. There are 10 top banks in the world which dominated by the Israeli lobbies in America. Six of them are directly linked with the Israeli lobbies in America, and every American politician who want to go against the Israel is going to face a financial, media, and a governmental blockout, and that is where they are feeling helpless inside their America. Imagine you can criticize American government, every department of American government inside America, but you cannot criticize Israeli administration inside America, even if you are elected representative. And that is what she have faced, Rashida Talib, which is the only Palestinian Congress woman in the United States. So you can see how helpless even the politicians of Americans are under the influence of the multinational corporations and big buckets and deep buckets of the Israeli influencers in America.
Nazir, coming back to you, do you think that this problem will keep going on even if this current phase of war stops? Do you find any solution in the line of your sight with regards to this problem?
Well, the world is changing. It's not anymore a single polar world. The new rising bloc of Russia, China, and other countries in the east, especially, this bloc is changing the system of the world. The people, the nations around the world are also being aware of what's happening. Before they were just controlled by the media, but today the media is not so effective, especially with the world of social media. We have seen hundreds of social media activists in America, in Canada, in England, in France, in different areas. They are supporting the casualties, the people suffering in Palestine. They were crying for these people, and even they are collecting donations to support the humanitarian situation in Gaza. That was something not normal. That was something banned before. No one can collect donations for Gaza, but now even the non-Muslims and the Western people, they are collecting donations for the humanitarian situation in Gaza. This is something not normal, and that means that the world is changing. Maybe the Zionist regime is not aware, but definitely their leaders, their superiors, the Americans, they understand this situation. And definitely they need to change their policies towards the Middle East and especially towards Palestine. A lot of countries are not condemning the Palestinians for asking for their rights, for demanding their rights, their natural rights, their human rights, for having a state for their own, for having their hospitals, for having their airports, for having freedom to trade with the world.
For having the right to live.
Exactly, exactly.
Right to, coming back to you, Zaki, our final 2 minutes. So, do you have any hope for seeing something positive, or will it infinitely continue in the ruthless manner as have been observed thus far?
There are there are glimpses of hope, as we see that the Israeli demand in the beginning, it was that they want to eliminate the resistance group, Palestinian resistance group, which they understood it's impossible and failed. And now they changed their narrative, that now they are saying we want to make a buffer zone in Gaza. And still they are trying to convince Arab leaders in the region that we need extra land from Gaza for the Israeli military use. But that is not going to also happen with the negotiation that it's collapsed right now. It was based on that. The Israeli want to make a buffer zone in Gaza, and that mostly Palestinian resistance group and Arab leaders, they rejected that offer, and that shows the Israeli decline of their initial demand. That is one glimpse of hope that the Palestinian people will remain their land and they will have their land, whether the Israel is going to continue for a long time this war or not. Now it have a second point, which is a lot more pressure for Israel from the Western media, from the Western democratic people who are demonstrating across the world, putting a lot of pressure and boycotting even the every institution and business people who are supporting Israel. And that is extremely damaging the Israeli military mechanism and the Israeli economic system, and that they cannot hold for a long time to continue the war.
Thank you very much, Ahmed Zaki. Thank you very much, Nazir Moeed, for being guest in our show. Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard the very heartening conversation from both the participants of the show. Both of them share the concerns that the people of Palestine are losing their hope, are losing their lives, and they have, at the very least, a right to live in absolute peace. In the end, I'll only say that war does not determine who is right. It only determines who's left. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.